What would you do today if you knew that that decision could change your life in a year? The woman I am today is someone who only lived in my dreams this time last year. I just finished my first year in my dream career. I'm living in the space that was on my vision board. I am no longer feeling stuck by a life full of all of this hidden clutter. My YouTube channel is finally growing. And yes, there are 100% still some things that I am working on and that I want, but OMG. I freaking love my life. I am so thankful for where I am and the growth that I made throughout this year. But it didn't always used to be that way, because before I made a few changes that I'm actually going to share with you today, I felt so stuck. Year after year, I felt like I was on this treadmill, like never going anywhere, wanting more, but finding myself in the exact same place year after year after year. So if you feel like you're on that treadmill and you need just a little bit of motivation to get off and to see yourself a year from now being different, being better, being happier than you are today, then keep watching. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Christy, and I make content centered around realizing no matter where we are in life, no matter our age, we are just on time to live the life of our dreams. And right now, we are in the middle of our Show Up Summer 60 challenge, where we are working to be our best selves by summer. So many of you know that I am actually a professor. This was my first year as a faculty member at a university, and yesterday was graduation. And I'm just really overwhelmed by how different my life is this year compared to where it was last year. I have always been someone who wanted more out of life, but I used to feel so stuck and I just wasn't sure how to get there. And so today I just want to have a little chit chat with you about what it has taken for me to go from being stuck to actually start seeing changes. And so I'm just going to front load it. One of the biggest things that has caused me to see change is realizing that I had to make a leap of faith, and one decision can change everything. It used to be that I would see people doing things that I wanted to do, and on paper, it looked like we had kind of the same things. We had the same kind of background, we had the same job, we had kind of all of the same stuff, but they had the courage to say, okay, I want to do this, or I'm just going to go travel to Europe, for example. And I would be like, how do they just decide they want to do something and then do it? Or people who started a YouTube channel, I would sit back and I would be just so impressed by them, but I didn't know how to be able to do that. And so I would just stay in my space and not actually do anything about it. But that actually changed for me when I made a couple of leaps of faith earlier this year. And a lot of you have gotten a chance to see my YouTube channel just really popped off. This time last year, I was sitting at just over 1,000 subscribers, and oh my goodness, the work that it took, it felt like pulling teeth to be able to get there. But this year, things just started rapidly moving. And over the past 4 months, I have gained just over 20,000 subscribers. But that was because of the leap of faith that I made back in early 22 to start a YouTube channel without any knowledge about it, no videography skills, zero photography skills. I just did not have the background for it, but I felt like it was something that God had just put in my heart and said, start a YouTube channel. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel. And it was scary because I didn't know what people were gonna think about it. I didn't want anybody to see it, but it was still what I knew that God had put in my heart. So I made that leap of faith and I did it. Last year, I accepted my dream position as a faculty member, as a professor at a university, and it has caused my life to look so different now than it did last year. This time last year, I was working at a job that I actually really loved, but I just knew that God had more for me, and what I wanted was a position that really aligned with who I am as a person, the life that I want to live. And that for me was being a full-time professor. But being able to accept that job last year was because of a leap of faith that I made like 8 years ago to enter into a PhD program. If you haven't heard that story, I'll actually pop it up here and I'll put it in the description below. But the quick version of it is that I was at a fork in the road where I finished up my master's and I had this opportunity to be able to go into a PhD program through a grant that would have funded my specialty. So I could have gone in that, but I would not have been able to work full time. Or at my job, I was up for a promotion that was pretty much a guarantee, and the pay would have been amazing and it would have been stable. But it felt like the safe choice as opposed to the dream choice. And my dream choice was actually doing the PhD program. It had been for a really long time. And I had to make that scary leap of faith as a grown person who many times was living paycheck to paycheck to be a full-time PhD student where I was making even less money. But I felt so certain that if I made that leap of faith, that it was going to change my life. And it 100% did. And it did so immediately because it changed my mindset that I can be one of those people who says, I want to do this thing and I can do this thing. And I got a chance to see that things actually work out when you make that leap of faith. At the beginning, before you actually do it, you have no clue how the resources are going to come. You have no clue how the things are going to fall in place. But once you actually make that leap of faith, it's like everything just lines up so that that thing could happen. And that was what happened for me. Mentally, I was able to shake off a lot of limiting beliefs that I had about myself. I realized I was the one kind of standing in my way. There was just this block in my brain because I just couldn't see how to be able to do it and how all of the dollars and cents were going to come together. The math was not mathing in a lot of different areas. But once I made that leap of faith, everything changed. Like I was able to travel more. I was able to have more flexibility. I was never more financially secure than when I was in my PhD program. And so the goal of this is not to say, hey, go get more education, go back to school. If you want to do that, absolutely do that. I am rooting for you. I clearly love education, but that's not the goal of this piece of the conversation. What it is what decision is it that you are sitting on? What is the thing that God has placed in your heart for you to do, but you're too scared to make that leap of faith to actually do it? There is something inside of you that's saying, I need to do this, but because it feels scary, because you don't fully know how it's going to work out, because you may not have the skills to be able to do it, because you don't know if you have the resources or all of these variables, you're not doing it. Without that leap of faith, we never get to the place that God has for us. We never get to our best. Yes, we might be perfectly fine. If I had gone that route with my other job where I got this super high promotion and I did that, life would have been fine. But I know that I would have missed out on so many opportunities and so many things that I wanted to do. And I still would have felt stuck, even though I was in a higher position, because I wasn't going after what was the best. I've said this before, but when we make leaps of faith, it gives us the courage to be able to make more leaps of faith and to be able to see where if I do this thing, then it's probably going to work out. I don't fully know, but it's probably going to work out because all of those decisions tie together and give us the courage to do more things. My leap of faith was the PhD program, but that one leap of faith actually led me to be able to make more leaps of faith in the future, to be able to travel across the world, to be able to start my YouTube channel, to be able to do things that were dreams and that were things that I wanted to do. But before I made that faith step, I would have been like, I can't do this because in my head, I don't see how that's going to work out. The next thing is to stay consistent and to accept that it's going to be a process. Where I am today is not just a reflection of the decision that I made last year to apply for this job and to accept it, but it's a reflection of decisions that I made even 10 years ago. Every decision that we make actually plants the seed for our future self. I'm not much of a green thumb person, but I understand the process. But you don't see the end result of something that you have planted immediately after. You have to put that seed in the ground, you have to water it, you have to check on it, you have to cut the dead leaves around it, you have to do all the things. Plant people, forgive me if I'm butchering this, but that's basically the process. We don't plant something and then the next day we have apples. No, we have to sometimes wait years in order to see the results of the things that we have planted. And we're still going to be so happy with the end result of it because we know what it took to get there. And it is something that is sustainable and something that can bear fruit in our lives forever. But it was because we planted that seed and we followed the process of it. I feel like since making the decision to make that leap of faith for my PhD program, every single year, I am becoming more and more the woman of my dreams because I'm willing to follow the process. I know that sometimes things take a really long time. And if we're looking for instant gratification from something, that is going to constantly lead to disappointment. It was going to constantly lead to us stopping, starting over, stopping, starting over, stopping, starting over, because we're not willing to commit to what it takes to actually make this thing happen. A lot of times we see these people who have had this really quick rise, and we think, oh, well, they were able to do this thing overnight. But oftentimes we don't know the backstory that they have to be able to get to where it is that they've gotten to. My YouTube channel has started to grow pretty rapidly now. Like I said, I've grown like 20,000 people, 20,000 plus people in about 4 months. But that was because of the hard work that I was putting in starting. Whenever I decided I'm starting this YouTube channel, it was a lot of work that I was putting in, learning from other people, staying up late, actually working on editing, trying to figure out how to be able to do that, trying to grow a little bit better with each video, just really putting in that work and that dedicated effort, even though for a long time, I was seeing nothing. I was getting no comments. I was getting very little views. It just felt like I was putting in all of this work, but nothing was happening. But that was part of the process. And I was learning, and I'm still learning as I continue to follow the process. With my decluttering, for a long time, there were things that I knew were hidden and were tucked away that I did not want to deal with, because emotionally, I didn't want to deal with them. Physically, I just didn't want to look at them. So I just put them away, like I said, in pretty bins so that I would not have to see them. But I had to follow the process of saying, okay, I am going to do this one bin at a time, one closet at a time. I know that a lot of times it is going to be messier before it gets better, but I am willing to put in that effort because I'm done carrying this stuff with me from place to place to place, and it's stopping me from really fully living my life. Also, we have to not be afraid to fail. And I know that's kind of a hard one because nobody wants to be a failure. And I think even more than that is we don't want to be perceived as a failure. We don't want to be a failure for ourselves, but we really don't want other people to see us fail. We have just got to get out of that. Like, failure is part of the process, and it's nothing wrong with that. We have to see failure as something to learn from, as opposed to something to just get down on ourselves about and say, okay, well, this thing isn't for me. Many times we are so afraid of what other people are going to say when we try something new, and we potentially aren't great with it. That's okay. You will fall on your face and people are going to talk, but you will also be successful and people are going to talk. I got to the point where not doing the thing actually scared me more than doing the thing and falling on my face, because I did not want to live with the what if. What if I could have done that? What if I could have changed my life? What if this could have been the thing, but I was too scared to jump out there and do it? I don't care what people say. I'm sure people have talked, and that's totally fine. That's on them. It's not my responsibility to manage what other people think. It is my responsibility to go after my dreams and go after the life that God has destined for me. He has it for me. He is saying yes. But if I'm the one saying no, then I'm blocking my own blessing, and your girl ain't got time for that. We also get afraid of wasting time, thinking that if I do this, then it's going to take this long. And I don't know if I have that much time, or I want to invest that much time into a thing. If your thing is going to take some time, stop being afraid of the time that it's going to take to invest in yourself. My mom always used to say that that time is going to pass anyway. And so you can find yourself at this point being much further toward your goal, or you can find yourself at the exact same place. It is up to you, but that time is going to pass anyway. And being a little bit older when we get there is totally fine, because you are going to love it whether you are 23 or whether you are 90. As long as we are still living, there's still time to live the life of our dreams. And that's why I always say that in my videos, because I used to always feel like, oh, well, I don't have enough time, or I'm too old for this, and I should have done this at this point. You didn't do it at that point. So what are you going to do now to get to where you want to go? The other thing that has led to change is really prioritizing rest. Rest is so vital. Rest is so important. I think many times it feels like, oh, I'm such a hero if I'm only getting like 2 and 3 hours of sleep. Babe, that is not a badge of honor. You need rest. Without it, we don't see things clearly. Without it, we don't have the energy or the motivation to keep moving forward. And we're just not designed to thrive when we're not resting. So yesterday when I was at the graduation, the keynote speaker was actually talking about this idea and this need for rest. And I will just actually read it so that I don't butcher up his words. But he said that physician and researcher Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith argues that human beings versus human doings must prioritize rest and restoration in 7 specific categories. And he really pushed us to think, what type of rest or restoration am I needing right now so that I can fill up my cup? And so the 7 different categories are physical. How are we making sure that we're prioritizing our physical rest through either walking or stretching or yoga or actual rest? Mental rest. How are we giving ourselves brain breaks and silence, journaling, and being mindful about things? Emotional rest, giving ourselves the opportunity to be able to express our feelings. Maybe that's going through therapy. Maybe that's talking to a trusted loved one. Social rest, making sure that we are spending time with the people who, again, fill our cups. Sensory rest, unplugging, making sure that we have time away from our devices and not constantly being stimulated by all of these sensory things that are pulling our attention. Creative rest. How are we working on things that bring us joy? Having hobbies, having creative projects that allow us a different switch in our brains. And then spiritual rest, making sure that we have that connection with God, making sure that we're praying and that we're meditating and that we are being grateful where our lives are, but just growing that relationship with God. We need rest in all of these different areas. And so often we neglect all of these other things while we're trying to get to whatever, or because life gets busy and we forget that we actually do need rest for our bodies and our minds and our spirits and our hearts and everything about us to be able to thrive. So that just really kind of like, that really stuck with me, is realizing that I have had several moments, even now, where I will push myself to burn out, but the change has been, I no longer think, oh, I can go and go and go and I'll be fine. I know that if I'm going and going, I'm probably due for a crash and I don't want to crash. So how do I make sure that I preempt that and I give myself the rest that I need so that I can keep moving forward in the direction that I want to go? I'm not perfect and I still have things that I want to work on, but to see where I was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it is mind blowing that I am now living my dream life. So what would you do if I told you that who you'll be a year from now is a direct reflection of the decisions that you make today? What choices would you make? What dreams would you pursue? What habits would you start or stop? Or would you be okay to make no decision at all and be in the exact same place you are today? So, something for you to chew on. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in my next. Mwah. Love you.